the carburetor, exactly.
What house? The end of the span. It's a common occurrence in this household.
Hello. Oh, there we go.
Hey, Skinny. How you doing, buddy?
What's going on, Pierre?
I'm staying out of trouble, buddy.
Good, good. Well, everyone, welcome. Oh, look at you. Welcome, everyone.
You told me that some of your friends were drinking it tonight, so I figured I would drink it tonight.
Well, cheers. Thank you for joining us this evening, and everyone, thank you. Sheila, bonjour.
Bonjour. Thank you so much for joining us. Where are you? You're in the States, right?
Yeah, I'm in Washington in my living room.
Okay, cool. So we're not getting you too far off. We've done a couple of these virtual sessions where I actually feel very bad. I think we're waking people up at 2 in the morning.
You should feel bad because I was up at 2 in the morning.
I definitely feel bad.
So I've been up since 2 a.m. and I'm tired.
Oh, well, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
The dagger on your wrist, that puts fear in a man's mind. Just to let you know.
Yeah, it makes me a little bit tougher. It helps keep Adam in line.
Yeah.
There you go. I would recommend a 44 Magnum, but what do you want from me?
Remember, Pierre, we're in Canada, not United States.
Oh, that reminds me. Have we started the webinar, or do we still have a second?
I think. Have we? Is everybody in? Have we started?
We've started.
Okay. We're live.
Yeah, give me 10 seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
Like, this is where you can't say anything terrible. Like, we're live now.
Yeah.
The one thing, just before we get started, the one thing that I do want to tell everybody is our lovely colleague Sheena is also moderating the chat here. So please feel free, throw any questions in there. We love to get some discussion going. Anything you want to hear. I know we have quite a number of people on, so we'll kind of pull people in and respond to all these questions in the chat as much as possible. So we got lots to cover this hour.
Okay, now I'm ready.
All right, perfect.
So you were really serious when we spoke today, and you said there's going to be a salesperson and a clown. So I think we.
Well, I'm not a clown. I'm the former president of the United States.
I was wondering, you've got the quaff.
Yeah. It's in honor of the trial in the United States Senate right now.
Oh my God.
Hey, it's not bad. If you're going to get tried for something, having half of the jurors be co-conspirators, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah.
Well, I think.
Let's talk vino.
There's a lot of.
Yeah, let's talk Burgundy, shall we?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about, but given that we told a lot of people about this, and kind of advertise the Fleury and the Gevrey trio, I thought, why not start there and tell.
Oh, okay. May I do something super quick? This question is for both of you. Let's jump into Remoissenet a little bit quick, because we're gonna talk all things Remoissenet for the next hour. So do you guys mind doing a little bit of the quick history and obviously the connection to Halpern and why we're here?
Well, here, go ahead.
Sure. So, history is really difficult to understand without going way back in time, right? So at the French Revolution, prior to the French Revolution, all of the vineyards in Burgundy were owned by the nobility and the church. And at the Revolution, that was taken away from them and redistributed to the farmers who were farming pieces of land for the nobility and the church. The people who were making the wine for the nobility and the church were then unemployed because, heads had just rolled. So they became négociants. And the term négociant comes from negotiate, obviously, because they would negotiate terms with these farmers who had neither cellars nor fermenters nor the knowledge of how you make wine. This wig is driving me nuts. And so négociants really ruled the roost until between 1850 and 1870, when a number of growers realized that they could ferment wine on their own. They didn't need people to ferment it for them. And so a whole bunch of new négociants popped up on the scene whose specialty was to buy wine that had been fermented and do the élevage and the bottling, which are really, important parts of the process. And then the selling, which, when you were a small grower in the 19th century in Chambol-Musigny, for example, the chance of you knowing how to go out there and sell your wine was, pretty insignificant. So that's when Remoissenet popped up. Remoissenet popped up in that era where if you knew how to taste wines post alcoholic fermentation, pre-malolactic fermentation, negotiate deals, and line up really the best growers, then you had a business model. And that's what Remoissenet did. As we move forward in time, you get to 1936, and the Marquis d'Angerville, who passed away in 2003, Henri Gouge, Armand Rousseau, trying to remember who else was. The Dr. Georges Meunier. They were all friends, and they talked amongst themselves and convinced themselves that they could do the élevage, build cellars, do the élevage, do the bottling, and sell the wines. Now, if you hear those names, the Marquis d'Angerville, well, he's a marquis, so he's highfalutin to begin with. Rousseau was a very wealthy man. Dr. Georges Meunier was a top doctor in Dijon. So these were not small farmers, right? And 1936 isn't that long ago. I mean, both my parents were alive and kicking and doing well. So the concept of the estate bottled wine is a very new concept, not just in Burgundy, but in the Loire, in the Rhône, and elsewhere. In France, in Spain, in Italy, all over. But after that meeting in 1936, other growers started getting the impression that they could, do the élevage, bottle, and sell their wines. So little by little, the number of top growers that would sell to Remoissenet was diminishing. And really, it was 1980, 1979, 1980, where the top names, the Vogües, the Roumiers, the Rousseaus, you name it, right down the line, the Gros family, stopped selling, and so the business model of Remoissenet really started going downhill, and by the early aughts, Roland Remoissenet, who may he rest in peace, whose priorities were strip joints, hookers, really bad art, and then wine, decided to sell. And the model as it had been going on in Burgundy for years and years and years is that when famous names went up for sale, it was always the same guy that bought it. It was always Boisset. So Boisset owns, a myriad of old famous names in Burgundy. But Remoissenet was across the street from Jadot. And Jadot didn't want to have Boisset across the street. So they made a phone call. And they gathered really good, two brothers who were really good friends of the Pierre-Henri Gagé at Jadot, and Todd Halpern, and said, would you guys take this over? And so they did. And then a year later, they asked me to come in and take it over. So there you go. That's the long history of it. But
if anybody's not familiar, Todd Halpern is Adam's father, obviously the president of our company.
Yeah. Daddy-o. And when they offered me the position, I said no, and they said why, and I said because Remoissenet doesn't own any vineyards, and if your goal is to make great wine, you must own vineyards, and so you have 2.3 hectares of 2.1 hectares of Bonne Premier Crus. That's not going to get you anywhere. And Eddie said, well, Eddie Milstein said, well, what is needed to have more vineyards? And I said, money. And he said, Pierre, if there's one thing we have, it's money. So I agreed. And now we have almost 28 hectares in the estate. We've been building it year by year, slowly, as parcels we want come available at reasonable prices, because one of the rules of the Milsteins is they don't want to be like François Pinault or Bernard Arnault or Stanley Ho, bidding 50 to 80 to 100% above market. So we try to stay just above market to be competitive, but a hair's breadth above market. So we've lost a lot of deals to those willing to spend just astronomical sums of money. But we're building slowly, and we're very happy. I'm obsessive about the vineyards. I'm obsessive about sorting, and really, if you go back to, there are two texts that tell us how wines were made in the old days. One is written by the head winemaker for the Cistercian monastery that owned the Clos Vougeot, a guy by the name of Dom Denise, a monk by the name of Dom Denise, where he was asked by a monk in another Cistercian monk, but from Italy. He was asked, how do you guys make money from Pinot Nero? We can't do it. Well, Pinot Nero is Pinot Noir, right? So he wrote a book starting on January 1 and ending on December 31, explaining every step that they do. And so we have that text from history. And then we have Thomas Jefferson's text when he was ambassador to France, and he took a trip and visited all the wine regions that produced wines that he loved, and he spoke to people who made wine. So because the people with that knowledge, right, weren't schooled. They didn't go to school to learn this knowledge, right? They didn't know how to read and write. So we have no text from those who did the work. But Thomas Jefferson wrote a wonderful piece. And when he was in Burgundy, the guy he was talking with was a gentleman by the name of Parent, Parent. And, you know, there's a winery in, his descendants still have a winery in Pommard. Well, my vineyard manager is Jean-Luc Parent, another distant relative. So a little link there to Thomas Jefferson. But in those books, you see the same things being repeated over and over again. You harvest on taste, right? When the fruit tastes like what you want to eat at your dinner table, that's when you harvest. You don't harvest before, right? You harvest when the birds want to eat it. I remember when I was a wine critic, for those of you who are over or under 60 years old, I used to be a wine critic. When I was a wine critic, I remember I was down in the Pic Saint-Loup region in the Languedoc, and I was eating my normal lunch of a jambon beurre and a bottle of water between tastings, and I saw some sanglier, wild boars, come out of the forest, and they walked past a parcel of Mourvèdre, past a parcel of Syrah, past a parcel of Marsanne, and they went straight to a parcel of Roussanne, which is an early ripening varietal, and that's what they ate, right? They didn't touch the other stuff. So if the animals aren't gonna eat unripe fruit, what makes you think you're gonna make good wine from unripe fruit? So we do everything by taste. We sort like crazy, and then, which by the way, you find in Dom Denis's book, you know, but he had 100 pedophiles working for free. I don't, so I have to actually pay mine.
Thank you.
Oh, Adam, like that. I'm Catholic. I'm allowed, Adam. I'm allowed. Well, I was raised Catholic, but anyway. So we sort like crazy, and then we do everything the way the monks did it. We go into, you know, wooden open top fermenters. We go straight from the fermenters by gravity down into barrels. We don't sit there in a rack and put, you know, stuff in the barrels or whatever. We don't acidulate. We don't, you know, we're lazy. So we just let nature take its toll. So there you go.
What about, are you guys using more biodynamics and just different vineyard practices in the last couple of years?
So we launched biodynamics with the first vineyards that we bought we bought them in November of 06. So really 07 was the first growing season. We have shifted to do biodynamics and organics, depending on the vineyards, primarily because we changed vineyard manager, and he's really ramping up his knowledge base in biodynamics right now. But it's, at the very least, it's organic. If not, it's biodynamic.
So let's jump into, I mean, Adam, you put together, with Remoissenet, you put together this incredible back vintage offering. And I think, you know, one of the reasons we really wanted to have you on here too is it's almost daunting. I mean, even, you know, for us that even study Burgundy, to look at this range of wines that spans from the 40s until now, it's almost, you know, how do we approach it? And we wanted to kind of have a bit of a session with you to talk about your library. And
right.
You guys,
so we don't call it the library.
Sorry?
We don't call it the library.
Not the library. Okay.
Yeah, that because we sell three different things.
Okay.
We sell the wines that we produce, right? Since you know, the current releases. We sell what we call the library, and it has a back label that has an explanation of what the library is. And the library is wines that the Halpern Milstein regime that we made, and that we picked wines from wines from every vintage, and that we think are the best wines that we produce, and we set aside a percentage of those to sell later. Pre-COVID, you know, Eddie Milstein and I would go through the cellar and decide what was being put in the library. Now I have to kind of do it myself because, you know, COVID. But and then the older wines, which you guys are offering right now, we call that the cellar collection. Now, the cellar collection is not all the old wine that Remoissenet had when it was acquired. It is, when it was acquired, there were 1.1 million bottles of wine in the cellar. Of that 1.1 million, I just determined that there were 64,400, so less than 1%, that were really good. So we kept that 64,000, right, and made that the cellar collection. The other ones, if you want to try them, you can go to the Sheraton at the airport in Tashkent. You can go on Uzbekistan Airways. You know, they're all sorts of places you can find them, but they won't have our name on them.
So how did it get so big? Why, like, the million bottles down there? Was it
1.1 million? Because that was his model. That was his model. That was the Roland Remoissenet model, was that instead of selling something for €5 today, why would you do that if you can wait 10 years and sell it for 15? So his model was every year to buy wine, put it in the cellar, but sell wine that already had bottle age. And the way he got to that model was that his father, none of you, I mean, it's too bad Todd's not here because he's old enough to remember, but in the world of fine wine, there used to be a word that guaranteed to all consumers quality and provenance and storage. And that word was Nicolas. Because what is today the 7-Eleven of wine in France, you know, there's a Nicolas wine shop on every street corner. That's a brand that was bought by the people that put the wine shops on every street corner. What Nicolas originally were these amazing cellars under the city of Versailles. And they would buy the wines at release from the greatest producers in France and just stick them in those caves. And when those wines were ready to drink, they would clean them, label them, stamp the label with the Nicolas symbol, which was these double red circles with the word Nicolas in small print in between the two circles on the label. And those wines were always, you know, if you wanted to have a Cheval Blanc, or if you wanted to have a Richebourg or a Clos Vougeot or, you know, whatever, those were the wines that you hunted for at auction and whatnot. And Remoissenet was the source of all the Burgundies, right? So he knew that there was that market for older wines because he was the one feeding that market for Nicolas. So all the Nicolas Burgundies came through Remoissenet originally. And so therefore he knew how the market worked. So that was the market that he was really working with and for. That's why there was inventory.
It's just, it's such an astronomical amount. It's, you know, you hear that number of a million, but even how much you got down to is wild. So how did you guys go about when you put this back vintage offer that we're doing now? I mean, if anybody, I'm assuming most people on this that are watching now do have it. If you don't or are curious, please let us know and we'll get it to you. But how do you guys put this offer together?
Well, there's actually one gentleman in this chat that I might pull in who is quite well versed with our back vintage wines. I don't know if anyone drinks as many back vintage Remoissenets as he does, but we'll pull you in a sec, so make sure you're dressed appropriately. Regarding this offer, this is
not Jim McGovern. I'm okay.
Okay,
that's the offer right there. Even I have it, right?
But no, this offer, Sheila, this offer is something that we're really lucky to have this cellar that we can look to that still has obviously the provenance that many people that are looking for nowadays, where the wine hasn't moved. For the most part, these wines aren't even labeled, which you walk.
None of them are.
Right, and so you walk through the cellars of Remoissenet, I can share pictures, and the only thing that distinguishes the bottles are the little black chalkboards that say, Richebourg 1959 or what have you. So it's an experience that it's really hard to come by, and we're obviously really lucky to have the association with Remoissenet and be able to represent them here as well. But I'm going to pull in Jimbo because I think he's.
Oh no, it's McGovern.
I think he's pulling it. I think he's drinking something cool tonight. Let's see.
Okay, that calls for the wig.
Oh, let's see.
If I have to deal with McGovern, I'm putting the wig on. All right.
Okay, let's see if he knows how to use Zoom. I think he does.
I doubt it. His wife is probably showing him how to do it.
Oh, there he is.
No, I film a lot of stuff on Zoom. Come on, PA. How you
Hey,
doing?
my buddy, McGovern.
You're looking a little thin. What's going on?
It sucks. It sucks. I'm stuck in. I have to cook my own meals, baby.
Oh, that's no good. Now, what is all that crap in the background? I thought you were in the Remoissenet cellar. It looks like it's all kind of
No, it's my
deep
living room.
monk, Cistercian monk stuff.
Cistercian monks. Hold
Oh,
on.
okay. No, actually,
Don't get
sorry. It's
started.
I mean, does that broad over my left shoulder? And I'm not talking about my mother.
it's the year of
I'm
the
talking
ox.
about my
You're right. It's the
girlfriend,
year of the
statue.
ox. The year of the ox.
Yeah, I mean, it's come on, it's art.
And
It's antique.
Good.
Something looking into your office there or home, Jim. I would suggest you start spending a little money on art yourself.
I've got a great Chris Pratt here on the wall. Please don't come. He's a famous Canadian artist. We wouldn't know him. I'm sure you wouldn't.
He's so famous, I wouldn't know him. You're right.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Jimbo and the guys, this
Oh.
is Jim McGovern, good, very close friend of the families, and one of the great
I
clients.
love Jimbo. I love his wife more, but I love Jimbo.
Everybody loves my wife more. I'll get her on the call in a second here.
Amazing.
But I must
The only reason we put up with you, Jim, is so that we can spend time with your wife every once in a while.
Oh my gosh.
So you have a question for me, my friend.
Well, I'm going to interject the clown here for a moment. And just Jimbo, I know out of all people, we've had so many great occasions. Oh, there we go. What do we have here? A 1980 Chambertin Clos de Bez.
Oh, cool. I haven't had that.
So
It's
Jim,
really good.
As one of the people that have visited Remoissenet more than many, other than Pierre here, you've tasted, through, I won't say this entire list, but I would say you've tasted through a healthy amount. When people are approaching this list, like yourself, who love collecting Remoissenet, love collecting wine in general, how would you suggest these? Maybe not everyone's a newcomer to this, but when they're looking at a list of this, there's a lot to digest.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think the one thing is to ask somebody who's sort of been through some of the wines, or ask PA or yourself or Sheila that had a chance to try some. I mean, I think that's that's the first thing. People will get tied up on vintage. So everybody will rush to look at 78s, for example, just because that was a great year in Burgundy, and chances are these are all going to be great wines.
Yep.
Or 62 or wherever, some of the stuff like that. I just kind of took a bit of a rifle shot at this stuff, and I mean, I love the 78s because I want to make sure I have a big table full of 78s in a very short, in 2028 it'll be a pretty big year for that wine. But in general, I like some of these funky vintages, and I pulled out this 1980 because I love the wine. 80 is a really unheralded vintage, but it's an insider's vintage. It's one where, if you've ever had a Rousseau 80, you know how good they are. And this Bez is a lot like it. There's still great acidity in the wine, great barnyard funk, and it's a fun wine to try. So I kind of like pick something interesting. Obviously, you got there's different prices for everything, right? But one of the great wines I had from you guys was the 78 Village Chambol.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Oh my God. And that one was underpriced. It was a bit of a pick off, but I think it's moved up a little bit since then. But that was a great wine.
It's actually disappeared.
It's disappeared. Okay, there you
The
go.
village. So what that was, you know how Vogue declassifies their village wines, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Young Musney.
And their Premier Cruise. That was declassified Premier Cruise from Vogue back in the 78 vintage.
Yeah.
Right. But that's gone, baby. There's another one like that was a 69 Pomard that was amazing, but that's gone.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
but there's a lot of amazing wines. One that I thought was on your list, but I don't see on here, is the 72, which is a year nobody ever thinks about. The 72 Clos Saint-Denis, which was an amazing bottle of wine.
I imagine that was one of them where you said, "Hey, Adam, I got 2 bottles left."
No, there's a little bit more than that, but it's one that your father bought an ocean of, and both and Eddie Milstead did too. But the 52 and the 53 Clos Vougeot are insane wines.
And
Yeah.
Pierre, I know, and Jim, I would love to hear your opinion on this.
Now Jim is pushing 78 because that's his birth year.
No, I'm 62. I'm 62. We do have a few 62s from Remoissenet. It's a great vintage for Burgundy.
But Pierre and Jim, and once again, Jim, your experience in drinking these wines is very valued in this conversation. It's, a lot of people are thinking, they're looking at, all the way back to 1947 on this list. And people are sometimes concerned with, how long do these wines really have? I always like to turn to the fact that these wines have hardly moved, if ever.
Right. So they're stuck in time.
Right. So, a lot of people are sometimes concerned about, if they are going to spend this amount of money on a bottle of wine, there are never any assurances with wine. That's one of the interesting things.
If I can interject real quick, if everybody can take their pens out.
Oh.
On page 2 of the offering of the old wines,
yeah,
the 3-liter bottle of 1995 Volnay, that wine sucks. That wine needs to be removed from the list.
Okay.
I don't know how it got on there. I apologize, but that is a wine that my colleague Bernie likes to serve at dinner parties at his house. And that's why I don't go to dinner parties at his house. It's not a good one. So you should scratch that wine off your list.
Well, that's gone then. But I think I'll return to the conversation and maybe
a little honesty never hurt anybody.
No, this is why we're doing this. This is perfect.
Yeah.
My birth year wine on here, the 64 Clos Vougeot in Magnum. I mean, it's
That's great.
It's a killer wine. It's a great bottle of wine. So you should not buy it so that when I turn 60, I can have some. But that's a beautiful, beautiful wine. You've had that, Jim.
Yeah. I've got some 62 and some 64. It's my wife's birth year. So.
But
we had somebody ask in the chat, and just for both of you, Dennis asked, he's like, I'm a rookie with very old vintages of Burgundy. So what temperature would you recommend storing these at? And what should I expect from, a well-aged, good vintage? Like, how do these develop?
So, right. So that's a big question. So the first part is that there are old wines, and then there are old wines that never left the cellar in which they were made. Right. So the wine that, if you imagine, for example, let's pick one from the list here, the 67 Chambertin, the list here, or let's go to the 67 Chambeau Village. The 67 Chambeau Village, if you had bought that wine in 1970 and it had crossed the Atlantic, it had done the Sarah Lawrence, you had gotten the wine, and you put it in your cellar, what happens is the minute that wine leaves the place it was made, the pace of aging kicks in at a relatively fast pace compared to a wine that has never left the place it was born. It has never been shaken. It has never, been manhandled on the docks. It's never had temperature changes. So wines, and it's not just Remoissenet, it's true everywhere. Wines that have never moved from where they were born or made are going to be far, far younger and far, far less old than you imagine. Now there are exceptions to that in the South, because nobody was putting in air conditioning in the cellars of Bordeaux until the mid '80s. So when you see these direct offerings from the chateau on 78 Bordeaux's, you should run for the hills, because they were stored without AC. But and they have a very high water table. We don't have a high water table, so we just have deep cellars. But anyway, so a 78 Chambolle Musigny from our cellars, and on the back label you'll see the month and year that the wine leaves our cellar on all the old wines. That is when the aging kicks in. So do not buy a 67 Chambolle from us and put it in your cellar to age for 50 years. That would be a stupid move. But if you put our 67 Chambolle in your cellar, you can drink it over the next 10, 15 years, no problem whatsoever. So that's number one on cellaring. Number two was, how do these wines taste? Well, wine pros like to speak of primary, secondary, and tertiary flavors, right? And now we're getting a little bit into the weeds. But the primary flavors are going to be, you taste a young wine, like I'm drinking right now the Fleury from us, and it's all going to be, cherries and blackberries, maybe some brambleberries, things like that. Then you move into with bottle age, you'll start picking up secondary flavors. So yeah, you're going to have notes of fruit, absolutely, but you're also going to be bringing in, notes of graphite, notes of with the undergrowth in the forest. If you go for a walk in the woods early in the morning when the dew is still in the leaves, those aromas, right? What the British like to call beetroot, flavors like that, aromas like that. And then when you get, fully mature wines, what was, cherries and blackberries and brambleberries and stuff remains kind of this sweet, dark or red background to these tertiary flavors of, undergrowth and mushrooms and sweet porcini and things like that. So it's really an evolution of the flavors, and therefore really an evolution of complexity, because if you taste a young wine and it tastes really complex, then what you have in your glass is a wine that's going to be crap within 3 years. Great young wines taste of fruit, and they age to bring you complexity. So if they have complexity on day one, they're basically on a short road over the pier, a long walk over a short pier, or whatever the expression is. So there you go. I hope it was Dennis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope I answered his question. If not, he can, call me.
And I must say, there's, I want to, go full circle and then come back to the many questions that I'm sure we're going to have. But
yeah, we can do kind of like a quick fire with some of the vintages and stuff later.
Yeah, well, for the fun of it, Jimbo, I don't know if you have the list in front of you, but what would you say are some of the best Remoissenets you've ever had?
Gosh, I mean, a lot of them. I mean, obviously, I've loved this 80 Chambertin is actually one of my favorites. The 78 Richebourg, 62 Rich, 53. I remember what it was. Now you're asking if I had all my notes prepared, I could have told you, because I got all this.
I know, I put that on here.
But yeah, I mean, obviously a lot. I must say, I'm a huge fan of the, the current lineup too. I mean, I love these older library wines, or I guess cellar selection wines. As Pierre said, I mean, you get these remarkable flavors and noses that you don't get in young wines. And for me, this 80 has, Pierre mentioned it, there's a sweetness over top of this sous-bois autumn sort of flavors, mushroom. You don't get it in any other wine. You just don't.
Right.
And that is what you pay the money for. It's the nose. It's not even the mouth. I mean, I would say that a lot of the older wines, people that I serve them to might find them a little astringent. They might find them maybe the fruit balance with the acidity isn't perfect or whatever. But that's actually not what you're really buying for. These wines typically are terrific with food because of the acidity, but it's that nose. And I know, I've done lots of blind tastings with friends who are not wine enthusiasts, let's say, and serving them older wines. It's the nose that they can't get their minds around how nice it is. So that's for me. But I'm a huge fan of of what's going on now and the progress that's been made in the lineups. I mean, when you guys bought that Lanvin piece of Clos Vougeot, so for me, that's I buy that every year, regardless of vintage or whatever anybody says about the vintage, doesn't matter. But those are great wines, and Claudette's made some incredible progress with the whites too. And
Yep.
And so
you know what's a wine that you should look for in the coming years? We just bought it 2 years ago. We bought this estate in Savigny a couple years ago, 2 years ago. And there are two vineyards there: the Savigny-les-Beaunes Premier Cru, les Lavières, which was vineyards planted in 1922, which is my mother's birth year. So I've been loading up on that and the Savigny-les-Beaunes Auguette. Those two parcels are going to deliver unbelievable wine for the money. And you should, next time you come to Beaune, next time you're a boner, we'll serve you. We'll pull on those barrels for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. The Savignys, I mean, as the wines keep sort of going up in price because the scarcity value and the demand, it's crazy. But yeah, for sure, the wines of Savigny, like, I'm glad you guys are in there. I mean, there's a couple of really top-notch producers there that I love to drink their wines. I mean, for $50, $60, you're getting great wine. Yep.
And the world, the thing that concerns me the most about Burgundy is what do young people get to drink? Because someone who can spend $1,000 on a bottle of wine is always going to find great wine by doing their homework. But what do you drink when you're 25 and you don't earn that kind of money? And so Burgundy, by the very nature of Burgundy, is expensive. In the last 5 years, the cost of fruit in the Bourgogne Rouge appellation, right, has gone up 60%. Now we've gone up, I think, 8% on our Bourgogne Rouge, but that's not going to last, folks, because the bulk prices are going through the roof for fruit, right? And so our Bourgogne Rouge is made from our estate fruit, but also we're buying fruit, and what we're buying has gone up 60%.
And
that's been across the board for all Bourgogne Rouge lately, no? Like
well, totally. And it's so what happens at the board. So that had happened originally in the King Dogs, right? The Musigny's, the Clos Vougeots, the big Grand Crus, the famous Grand Crus, right? That the prices had gone through the roof. I expected the next wave to hit the Premier Crus and stuff like that, but no. The next wave has hit the Bourgogne Rouge, right? And so, but it tells us something about our society where we have the super rich and then we have the non-super rich who are buying Bourgogne Rouge. But the middle has not jumped in price at all. But it will happen. I mean, Savignys and Beaunes and, these things will go, will go up in price. And it's, so how do you start out in the world of Burgundy? It's a tough issue, but we're doing our best to make unbelievably juicy, fruity, fun, really terroir-driven value Burgundies, right? Like I think our Sauternes are hitting the ball out of the park year in, year out. But I really do worry about people my nephew and niece's age, right? Because they, that's when you should be building your cellar and learning and drinking. So we concentrate a lot on trying to get wines out there at decent prices. So
it's a conversation that we have a ton, especially in these seminars. Is it's incredible to listen and chat about these vintages of Richebois or what have it. But in terms of the accessibility, and it's for sure, I think there's so much there's so much kind of meat and potatoes in that range that offers accessibility, but it's just the understanding of it and great producers making them and getting them out there.
And
right.
And something that Sheila and I do a lot of work together, buying and considering a lot of the Burgundian wines we represent in our portfolio, and seeing where our gaps are and trying to improve any place we can. And like you said, Pierre, we've already seen that that it's not a big jump already, but you already see that gradual increase in prices in the village level, entry level Burgundy.
We're really seeing it with Bourgogne lately.
Yeah,
and it's going to get worse because
it's crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and what surprised me today was seeing the super low end guys in Burgundy. The supermarket guys, the guys who sell wine to the gas stations on the highway. They're paying 60% above, what the market was 5 years ago right now. So, whoa, I just did something bad. What did I do?
Don't worry, we still.
Oh, there you are. Okay. So it's a little nuts right now, and we'll see how it all plays out. So I did want to mention that there's something cool on the lists here that.
Well, I'm gonna lead you there. I know where I'm gonna direct you, as we kind of slotted an hour. I feel like this is going to go a little past that, but I want to just direct you. And I'll start with the, many have seen our 2018 Remoissenet offer. These I like to call our allocated wines because, quite frankly, you could speak in detail about it, I'm sure, Pierre, but, we just we don't have enough. It isn't about, we want to make more. It's just physical, it's actual constraints to how much juice we can get out of our plots and from the ghosts. So I would like if you could briefly touch on the 2018 vintage and the offerings, and then I know you mentioned the 70 Le Bones, which we have some great mixed cases that you and I worked on together, along with some new offerings. So if we could get through that, if I could give you like 5 or so minutes to do that, so then we could leave 10 plus minutes to all these.
All right. So what you refer to as allocate is that sheet that you sent me?
There you go.
Okay.
It's really dealing, that's sheet specifically. I mean, the Charm.
All right. So if you believe that wines, that wine should be green and hard, and you enjoy having a very angry cat scratching its way on across your palate, don't buy our 2018 Burgundies. It is, if you go back in time and you look at what the great British critics were saying about the 45s or the 47s or the 59s or the 61s, and they said that they were too forward, too concentrated, too rich, too deep, too intense to be great Burgundies. And then 10 years later, they said they were the greatest Burgundies ever. That's why you should look at the 2018s. They are amazing, and they are amazing now, and they're going to be amazing down the road. I stuck a sizable chunk of my of my money into them. And, you know, the Milsteins and Todd are kind enough to give me 0 discount, but that's okay because they don't get one either. So I was all over the 18s like stink on poop. That's a professional wine term. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, for example, the Clos I see here, you know, it's, if you open it next year, you'll love it. If you stick it in the cellar and forget that you own it and your kids find it in 50 years, they're going to freak about how good it is. So, you know, go for it. And it's a vintage where top down is fabulous. So I think it's the greatest Bourgogne Rouge vintage I've ever encountered. But things like, you know, I see you have the Givry. It's you know, it's gorgeous. Yeah, so across the board, I just think 18 is just a great vintage. And
red and whites equally, would you say?
It's greater in red. I was talking mostly red. In white. It's a vintage where, you know, if you're what in the business we like to call acid whores, if you want a cutting white Burgundy, then this is not the vintage for you. They are
17s,
not
go for 17s.
right, but they're not. The 18 whites are not as rich and fat and buttery and whatnot as you would get in California, or you would get, you know, not nowhere near that, right? If you make a wine in Burgundy, it will always have Burgundian structure, and we did not, you know, it is a rule. If you speak to me, if you mention to me the idea of maybe throwing acid in our wine, then you have just been fired, right? I think that's the stupidest thing you can ever do to a wine. So we do not do that. I think they're beautiful wines, but they're not, you know, for acid whores like McGovern. But there you go.
So give me Remoissenet Pere all day.
There you go. But I'll tell you one wine that I see on your list that is one of the finest bottles of wine for the money you can find it's in that mixed case of Savignys, or I'm sorry, that mixed case of Centenays. The 2016 Centenay Clos de Tavannes is an insanely good bottle of wine.
And that's for everyone watching, that is something that many haven't seen yet offered to them, but they will.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's something I did want you to mention. It's something everyone will be seeing. I think we made 20 or so cases of that coming, and that's one of the 3 mixed cases that we have on their way. You know, mixed.
We'll have those out probably in the next couple weeks, maybe.
Those will be arriving sometime in later May.
Okay, so the Centenay mixed case is something that if I were, you know, just as a wine lover, I would buy it, because it has 3 things in it. It has a Centenay Village, which is actually a single vineyard wine, but in the agreement we have with the grower, because he's a famous grower, we're not allowed to mention the vineyard. And then it has the 17 Premier Cru Beaurepaire, which is a really amazing vineyard on the south side of Centenay. And then it has the 16 Clos de Tavannes, the Centenay Premier Cru Clos de Tavannes, which is, it is the last piece of dirt in Centenay, bordering the Chassagne Premier Cru, the Mojo. So if you're in this parcel, the Mojo is 1 meter away, right? You can spit to it. It's a biodynamically farmed parcel. It's just amazing wine. Everybody who tastes it is floored. So
and Pierre, I know you can continue talking forever, and I love that, and that's why we love talking to each other. But
Uh-huh.
one question I have, and then I want to take some of these questions that are flowing in, is some people did purchase the Gevrey Chambertin. I believe it was the 2016 trio. I was wondering if you could
Love that wine.
Can you tell
The
people
trio,
a little bit
baby.
about that?
Pardon me?
Can you tell people a little bit
Sure.
about the wine?
So we own 5 Premier Crus in Gevrey. The Casatier, and the Poisson, both of which are large enough that we can actually make a wine from them. The other 3 are these tiny little parcels that the volume is just not large enough to ferment them as a wine. So what we do is, and the 3 are, they're Premier Crus, right? So we harvest them the same day. We put the fruit in the same fermenter, and so and we make a wine, and we call it the trio because it's three vineyards. We originally wanted to call it Ménage à Trois, but that name is actually trademarked by a winery in California called Ménage à Trois. So we couldn't do that. But
You don't want
it's
to be confused with that.
pardon me? You're happy we couldn't do that, huh?
Oh, I said you don't want to be confused with that one, I don't think.
Right. But it's a fantastic one, and it has a tendency. The Poisson is all about the juxtaposition of bright acidity and tangy fruit. The Casatier is all about nobility and class and elegance. The trio is all about sweet, forward, love me, let me embrace you fruit. It's a wine I really dig. So,
Well,
and I'm a big fan of 16.
Yeah, I love 16.
Yeah,
okay.
totally
Well,
underrated. Great vintage.
We'll pop into some of these questions. I see one from Aaron Brown. He was asking, can you comment on the 1966 wines?
Sure. So 66 is a vintage that really surprised me, because my experience with 66s that my father had bought was not great. I mean, he had done an amazing job buying 64s, but his sources weren't great on 66. But I'm trying to see what 66s you have on your list here. But I've had recently the 66. Well, there it is, the 66 Volnay. Between the Volnay and the Chevrey, I would say to you that I would buy the Volnay. The Chevrey is every bit as good as the Volnay, but the Chevrey is more expensive.
And he's also Von Romanée Beaumont.
Right. I have not had that wine. I wish I had. I mean, I did back in 2005, but I don't have my notes. So it's been 15 years since I tried it. If I were you, I would try that 66 Volnay Village. If you're looking for one wine, Aaron.
And
Because that was just juicy and delicious.
And then we have Michael asking about, he said that 89 Chambertin is his birth year. Thoughts on
89?
that? Yeah,
His birth year is 89.
apparently.
And Michael, I was working at the White House when you were born, all right?
You actually were, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you were
Yeah.
present.
I got shut down by George H.W. Bush because I said, I think the question was like something like, Mr. President, you just can't, in your campaign for the office, you explained to us that you were the specialist on China in the United States, that you had been the first ambassador to China, you were the Chinese expert. And you also told us that the Bush policy was going to be supporting democratic movements throughout the world. And right now we have tanks driving over people in the streets of Beijing. and we have people being, slaughtered, and you're doing nothing. What gives? And after the press conference, I got paged to the Marlon Fitzwater's office, and he said to me, "For the next 30 days, you will not be called on."
Yeah, I guess.
Oh well.
So what about how was it for Charme Chambertin?
In 89. Well, sorry. I'm going to read the full question.
Okay.
Well, obviously, is anything you can on that wine in terms of information, and do they have a long storage life remaining given their age already?
Yeah, I don't know because I've not had the 89 Charme Chambertin. I wish I had. I know in 89 the Grand Echezot was really good, but that sold out, and the Meursault Genévrier we had was really good, but that sold out. I've not had the 89 Charme Chambertin. I'm sorry, Michael. I wish I could.
Pierre, have you had the 69 Clos Saint Jacques? I have
Yeah.
not.
Yes, I have.
Okay,
And
and where's the fruit from that from? There's only 5 producers.
you know that, don't you?
No, I'm throwing that out. I figured you might know.
You serve me something good, I'll tell you who
All right, well, fine. What because that looks like that does look like an ARB because it looks underpriced to me.
Right. I think it's a good wine. It's not as good as it should be.
Okay.
Given its pedigree.
Yeah. Okay.
But I've had that. Yeah. Given the pedigree, you would assume that it's one of the greatest wines you've ever had.
Yeah.
And it's not there. Now the 55 Clos Vougeot in Magnum, that is one of the greatest wines you've ever had. But my buddy Chris Newman doesn't want me to sell any of those because he wants to buy it all.
What's the 53 like versus the 55?
Oh, the 53 is fabulous.
Yeah.
The 53 is I did a vertical of Clos Vougeot at Aspen Food and Wine, and the idiot sommeliers, I told them not to do this, but they did it anyway. They poured the wine into Riedel sommelier glasses 2 hours before the event started, okay? So imagine these massive bowls, right? With just, a quarter of an inch of 60-year-old wine lying in the bottom of it. And I was just ripping my hair out when I saw that. And the wine was singing. Air had not, affected it in any way whatsoever. So the 52 and the 53 are home runs. There's a debate between, there's a debate as to which one is better. And that really has to do with when you open them. If you open them on Tuesday, you're going to like the 52. If you open them on Wednesday, it'll be the 53. I think Eddie the last time said it was the 53, but the time before that, he was a 52. So, but that's a billionaire's problem when you have to, you open them every night and you know.
And we just got a question from our good friend Tyler McNamara. There are unfortunately no 80s on this list, but how do you feel about the 79? So I know we have the 79 Musigny, the Clos de Bez.
The 79 Musigny is really good. The 79 Clos de Bez, I don't remember if I had that recently. I don't remember having that recently, but the 79 Musigny is really good. In fact, the label on the 79 Musigny is a Vieille Vigne label. For what that just told you.
David asked earlier, he was asking about the 1967s. He said there's lots of options for that vintage.
And they're really good. The 67s are really good. Underrated vintage, really good.
I've never opened one. I'm just going to go grab one and open it up, and I'll let you know. Hang on.
Oh, look at this.
But that's a great example too.
You got McGovern made a fortune by being Donald Trump's best friend. So he, so he can afford this stuff.
Okay,
I can say that because
of
well,
course,
he can't hear me because he left the
When
room.
he left the room.
Right.
Well timed, but in terms of well, I know Jimbo's getting his. We were just talking about 67s on this list. Are there any that would pop out? Because there are a bunch of 67s.
Out. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Sorry, I just did your out.
Oh,
I love that Canadian thing. I wish you guys would adopt Donald Trump and get him out of my country. The 67 Volnay is really top flight. Is there a dog barking?
That's Jim's dog.
He has a little thing, a little dog, a little toy dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess he couldn't afford a full-size dog. Yeah, you know, I've heard, but I haven't had it recently, that the Malconsor is really great. And the Clos des Chênes was really, really good. 67 just really was successful for us, very successful.
And one question I have before Jim gets back to this 67, a lot of people, you know, they're looking at these lists and you know, those that are interested in especially the higher priced wines and wines that are obviously more rare, you know, how, or maybe you're going to tell me, you might say, you know what, although you do represent Remoissenet, why is it that a lot of people reach for a Richebourg over, you know, a Clos Vougeot? Is there anything that you believe?
It's called compensation.
It's called compensation. Okay, other than
Yeah.
compensation.
Yeah, they're compensating for things that are lacking in other parts of their body or life.
And if they aren't compensating,
Look, the point of wine is to give pleasure, right? And Richebourg is an amazing vineyard, right? It's one of the greatest vineyards ever. But is the uptick that you have to pay to get your hands on a Richebourg worth a Richebourg? You know, it's like La Tâche. Is that worth it? So, I mean, you know, how many Richebourg do I have in my cellar right now? My personal cellar, right? I don't know, maybe 3. That's not my thing. I mean, I love that vineyard, but I love that vineyard when people who are far wealthier than I am pay for them.
When they bring it to the table.
What rocks my boat nowadays is, I think our Bon Turon is to die for, and the amount of wine that you get for the money in that bottle of wine is killer. In the Grand Cru world, our Charme Chambertin and our Clos Vougeot, I'm just madly in love with. By the way, I think your pricing on that list is a little off.
which wine?
If you look at the Charme Chambertin and the Clos Vougeot, they're the same at the 750 price, but all of a sudden on the Magnum,
the pricing, one thing that is incorrect is the 64 Clos Vougeot for sure. We just have to redo that.
No, but I'm talking about the 2018 Clos Vougeot.
Well, if the LCBO decided to give me incorrect pricing, that's they're going to pay us in full and pay you in full.
Okay, well, you may want to point out to them that even though the Charme Chambertin and the Clos Vougeot are the exact same price, but they have the Clos Vougeot at $119 more.
We'll take a look into that.
Okay.
Jimbo, what did we find in the cellar downstairs?
No, I know I have some 67s, but they're off site. No, I got lots of older ones, but they're not on the list. Like the 61 Riche. What's that one like? I've never had that beer.
Oh, there's
I haven't had it either.
Okay.
That was pre us.
Yeah.
That was pre-ownership. You must have bought that from Sherwood Deutsch.
No. I don't think so.
61.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, you're right.
Hey, what? Of course I'm right. I'm Pierre-Antoine Rovani.
Bloody hell. I went off piste on that one. This one's yours though. The 78 Volnay Clos des Chênes. Is that
Great
good?
bottle of wine.
Okay. That's not, you don't have any of the 78 Volnays on here, no?
Yeah, no, not the 78 Volnays, no.
Yeah, the 78 Richebourg is off the charts. Good.
This is actually a good time to ask this too. Is someone was also asking that they particularly like Gevrey and Volnay. And is there things from Gevrey and Volnay on the list that you would kind of narrow down to as your
Yeah, I think, I think that I think that's fascinating that someone would say that they like Gevrey and Volnay because they're very, very different villages. So good for them. I think, yeah, I mean, if I were that person, I would enter this with a thought that Remoissenet's sourcing in Volnay was off the charts. Remoissenet's sourcing in Gevrey was very good, but very good ain't off the charts. So you're going to get more bang from your buck buying our Volnays, I think, is my answer to you.
Perfect. All right, one more. When looking through the list and identifying the best wines, are there great wines because of the vintage, or is it a great wine because the fruit came from a great grower at that time?
Yeah, the sourcing is the key. The very fact that we're talking to you about 52s and 53s, 67s, that's sourcing. It's because the producers of these wines were really great. If not, we would be totally restricted to like 59, 69, 78. If this were vintage driven stuff. But that was the great success of Roland Remoissenet's father, was a palate that and sourcing that was just fabulous. So yeah.
I guess
I think we have one more vintage question, and then I think we'll wrap that up. I realized we missed one. Was 1978 thoughts?
Right. So 78 is one of the great all-time vintages. Our friend McGovern keeps repeating how much he's madly in love with the Richebourg 78.
What was that? Was that Clos de Chêne?
No,
Yeah, that was Clos de Chêne, yeah.
Right. But he's been drooling over the 78 Richebourg, which interestingly, I mean, the wine's fantastic out of bottle, but out of Magnum, it's like
different world.
It's just insanely good, right? It's at that point in its life right now where the Magnum is just taking over from the bottle.
And I think there's some Magnums there, right?
Yeah. Yep. And the same is true about the 64 Clos Vougeot, where the Mag and the 55 Clos Vougeot, where there's a significant difference in. I mean, not the bottles are great, but the Magnums are sublime. Magnums are the perfect size for aging wine. So if you have a daughter or a son that you want to put away wine from their birth year, Magnums are the way to go. That's just a free word of advice there to all mothers and fathers out there. My niece and nephew, don't tell them, because they would come over here with their buddies and drink them all. But they have a massive stash of Magnums in my cellar.
a lot beside mine.
From their birth years.
And beside my birth year.
No, you have nothing. You have squat.
You're in the 90s.
So, Adam, what's your birth year?
I plead the fifth.
93.
93?
It's a really funky Burgundy year. It's some really great 93s.
We just had
I had underwear older than that.
Oh.
In fact, I'm wearing underwear older than that as we speak.
You can't I can't unsee that. Like that's
right.
That's I'm gonna have nightmares.
I've saved a lot of money by wearing the same underwear all these years.
Well, before I let you guys go, Pierre, my last question for you is, a lot of people talk to wineries, and obviously I haven't tasted the 19s, whereas I would have probably tasted them once or twice by now. What's the number one? What's the outlook on 19s, and what's the outlook on Remoissenet? What do you, where do you see this our winery heading?
So, well, that's two really huge questions.
Okay, well,
on the 19s. The 19s are some people believe that they're the big brother of 2018. Some people believe it's the little sister of 2018. The two vintages have a lot in common. To me, there's more, there's perhaps more richness in the 18s, but the 19s may be easier to drink young. In white, it's a little bit the same story as the 18s. They're rich wines. I think our Cote D'Or Charlemagne in 19 is insanely good.
We'll take a skid of that.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. But it's always fun. I used to, at my grandmother's farm in Brittany, I used to in the summers I would work on the farm, and we would walk the cows to the fields, and we would pick different fields based on where we thought the grass really looked the best, and I would walk the cows out to the fields in the morning, and the cows would kind of saunter into the field we had picked out for them, and they would head to the fences, and they would stick their heads right between the two electrical little fences in order to eat the grass in the other field next door. It was like the most annoying thing you'd ever seen in your life. So here we are. We're here tonight to talk about the 18s and the 17s and the 16s that you have. And you ask me about the 19s. You're like a cow in a vineyard, man. Or a cow in a field.
They never let you
off. So the future of Remoissenet is, it's. I'm not a believer that if you're not constantly growing, then you're dying. I don't believe that. If that were the case, then a lot of the world's most famous wineries would be dead by now. But we are constantly looking at vineyards. I felt, and I said to our ownership, that COVID would have an impact of the combination of COVID and the Trump tariffs, which he was kind enough to take away all exemptions to it on New Year's Eve, which I thought was, just a really sweet thing to do. It's really hurt. I thought it was going to incredibly hurt a lot of people in Burgundy, but the vineyard prices have continued to go through the roof. So we are looking at a couple of things. One is taking over an estate in what the French call fermage, which is a rental agreement, basically, long-term rental agreement. So that would bring us some really sexy vineyards that even Jim McGovern would drink.
Well, firstly, Jimbo, thank you for joining. And at last second, I know your knowledge is so deep in Remoissenet, let alone wine, but it's always a pleasure to have you. So thank you for the last minute.
It was a lot of fun.
It's very nice to see you as well.
I miss you, Jim.
I miss you too, buddy. I haven't seen you so long.
You should fly to, you should do what all the Canadians do. Fly to Florida, get your vaccine. I'll drive down there and get my vaccine. And then once we have our vaccine, we can drink together again.
That would be fun.
But, all right. But Pierre, thank you as always. Always informative and so much knowledge. And we will have to do this again because as we keep bringing in more and more, and we work with the LCBO to bring in more and more, there's never enough knowledge and conversation. So next time we'll have to block up a full day with you.
It feels like we just scraped the surface. It's like, it's amazing. I could ask you questions for days, but just so everybody that is watching knows as well, we will send out, because there is definitely some questions about, I think there was a few pricing things on there. And then in terms of the 18s and the special offer, we'll do kind of a recap email for everyone that tuned in with just kind of the full list of everything that's coming and going so that you have access to it as well. And
yeah, and also, I congratulated, Adam wrote me that that people who were going to be online were going to be drinking the 2018 Fleury. Yeah. So I went down to the cellar and grabbed one of my bottles. And so I wrote him right before the event, and I said, so how much of that do you have to sell? And he said 0.
It just sold out.
So, I mean, so
it's our anti-sales tactic.
Yeah.
so we have a few. We'll make available to Ontario. We have a few left. That's a one. I don't know if you know the story behind our flurry, but it's
like
a
we're about to
wonderful.
hear it.
Do I have time?
Please. Anyone, if anyone wants to log off, they're welcome to. If not, we can listen to another story.
So I got a phone call from the number 2 maître d'hôtel at l'Hostellerie de Levernois, which is a wonderful relais chateau, Michelin starred place right outside of Beaune. And the number 2 maître d'hôtel called me and he said, can you help my little brother in Fleury? And I said, well, we don't make Fleury. And he said, yeah, but he really needs help. Can you? So I drove down there, and on the drive down there, I just kind of rehearsed in my mind all the reasons why I would not help that kid. Because if I go to market with a bottle of Remoissenet that says Fleury on it, then everybody's going to think that I'm, that there's like cistern trucks driving up the highway, to bring me, and that's not the business we're in. We're in the business to make great wine. That's rule number 1, is everything has to be about quality. So I go visit this guy, and the Beaujolais right now is in a massive recession, bordering on depression. And it's incredibly sad to see the poverty that these people are living in. Even people that in this country, or countries, are perceived as being these famous people from Beaujolais. They're unbelievably poor. As I pulled into the guy's driveway, he was putting duct tape on his child's little inflatable pool because there was a leak. And it was just like, oh God. Anyway, so I tasted through what he had made. This was like July, and he had just been dumped because his father was selling all the wine to this big negociant, and he had just been fired because the negociant decided that Beaujolais was no longer in his, what he wanted to do. And I tasted what he had, and it was fabulous. And I said, well, I can't buy this and bring it up to Beaune in a cistern, but if you make an estate wine and you do an estate bottle, then we will help you sell it. So he said he didn't know how to do any of that. So what we did is we sent our team down there. The bottles are estate bottled at his estate. It's his logo that's on the label. The wine was entirely made by him at his winery, in his vineyards, which are in the very upper reaches over the gorgeous village of Fleury. So you're not in the deep soils. So that's why the wine has structure instead of tasting like cherry bubblegum. So it's fruit forward like all Fleury, but it's it's got structure. It's a serious wine, and he's just a wonderful guy. So I'm paying him, 40% above market or 50% above market, and all I'm doing really is marketing the wine, selling the wine, because it's an estate bottled wine with his logo, those three trees on the label. But they're a wonderful young family, and and I think the wine's great. So did the critics, right? The Wine Advocate, Venice, you name it. Everybody was head over heels for it. So I'm trying to help this kid out.
Adam, you're gonna have to get some more of that then.
Yeah, he's a great kid, and he and his wife have these two lovely little munchkins. So it's every once in a while you got to do the right thing, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
So,
thank you for sharing that with us. It actually lends a ton of good context.
Yeah, they're good people, and I think I sent you all in the paperwork for it. I think I sent you that whole story and pictures of him and his family. So,
thank you.
I guess that's it. I think we covered a lot of the questions.
Well,
Okay.
if,
Oh, and by the way, there's a just to all my friends in Canada, you guys have a place called Flanagan's Meat Locker.
It's right around the corner from our office.
Okay. And I have a friend here in DC who's a famous chef who regularly does road trips to Toronto to go load up on saucisson sec and terrines and whatnots at Flanagan's. You know how long a drive that is? So the world's greatest wine with things like saucisson sec and terrine and the Boudin Noir they have, which is killer, is Fleury. So grab a bottle of Fleury, grab a saucisson sec,
there's the sales pitch.
grab somebody you love, and have a good time.
Well, Sheila
I guess a
also,
weekend planned.
Sheila, thank you as always. If I don't get off now, I know this is going to go till midnight, and I have to explain to my father why I'm not at work in the morning. So I think on that note, I appreciate once again everyone. Sheila,
I have a Zoom meeting in 6 hours with my office in Bone.
well, you know,
Thank you for joining us. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. I know the timing's weird, but
Hey, shit happens.
this was completely fascinating. This was amazing. Like,
well, everyone, once again, thank you. Stay safe, and if you have any friends or you want to go back and listen to this conversation, it'll probably be on our YouTube channel by tomorrow morning, maybe later this evening. And feel free to share. But thanks
yeah,
again.
and we'll recap everything too. And you can always email us. We're always around. So happy to talk Burgundy.
Thank you all so much for being here and for putting this on. And Jim, I love you, but I love your wife more.
There you go.
Tell her we say hi.
Bye, everyone.
You guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.